9 out of 10 Mercedes owners are unknowingly cutting their engine's life in half right now. That fluid you last changed 3 years ago? It is slowly destroying a $12,000 transmission. That warning light you ignored last month? It just cost someone an engine replacement. Your Mercedes was built to run past 500,000 miles. Most never see 200,000. The difference is 7 habits. Number 7 alone could save you thousands this year. Number 1 changes everything. Let us kick things off. Number 7, master your coolant system before it masters you. Most Mercedes owners check the oil and call it a day, and that is exactly why most Mercedes engines do not make it past 150,000 miles without major problems. The coolant system is the single most overlooked system on any Mercedes, and it is responsible for more catastrophic engine failures than almost anything else sitting under that hood. Here is what you need to understand. Your Mercedes engine is an aluminum-heavy machine. The engine block, the cylinder head, the water pump housing, the intake manifold, almost all of it is aluminum. Aluminum is lightweight and handles heat beautifully when it is properly protected, but aluminum is also highly reactive. Put the wrong coolant in contact with those components and the chemistry changes immediately. The protective coating that keeps your engine passages smooth and corrosion-free starts breaking down, and once that process starts, it does not stop on its own. Mercedes uses a specific OAT coolant, which stands for Organic Acid Technology. It is pink or blue depending on your specific model and region. It is precisely formulated to create and maintain that protective layer on aluminum surfaces while also keeping your rubber seals and hoses pliable and intact. Generic green coolant does not do this. In fact, when you mix generic coolant with Mercedes spec coolant, the two compounds react chemically and can form a gel-like sludge that clogs your radiator channels and restricts coolant flow to the parts of the engine that need it most. The owners who get 500,000 miles out of a Mercedes treat their coolant system like a religion. They flush and replace the coolant every 3 years without exception, using the correct Mercedes specification fluid every single time. They inspect the hoses and the coolant reservoir cap at every service because those plastic components become brittle under years of heat cycles, and a failed hose on the highway can drain your entire cooling system in minutes. There is one more habit the high-mileage Mercedes owners share on the cooling side. They monitor their temperature gauge actively every single time they drive. Not obsessively, but consistently. If that needle ever climbs higher than normal, they pull over immediately. They do not push it to the next exit. They do not hope it comes back down. They stop the car and investigate because an overheating Mercedes engine can crack a cylinder head in the time it takes you to find a parking lot. A cracked head is a $5,000 repair. The habit of watching your gauge costs absolutely nothing. Flush your coolant every 3 years. Use only the correct spec fluid. Inspect your hoses proactively. Watch your temperature gauge every drive. Those 4 habits alone will protect your engine from one of its most common and most expensive causes of early death. But here's the thing. Even if your cooling system is perfect, there's another fluid that quietly destroys more Mercedes transmissions every single year than any other factor, and 90% of owners are getting it completely wrong right now without even knowing it. Number 6. Treat your transmission. Fluid like the lifeline. It actually is. There is a myth sitting inside your Mercedes owner's manual that has cost thousands of drivers tens of thousands of dollars in avoidable repairs. It is 4 words, sealed for life. Mercedes printed that phrase next to the transmission fluid service interval on a generation of their vehicles, and the damage from those 4 words is still happening today on roads all over the country. Sealed for life does not mean the fluid never degrades. It means that under laboratory conditions, on a controlled test track, with no heat stress and no aggressive driving, the fluid was calculated to last the life of the gearbox. Real-world driving is nothing like that. Real-world driving means stop-and-go traffic, summer heat, occasional hard acceleration, and years of daily use. Under those conditions, transmission fluid degrades significantly faster than any laboratory test can predict. Here's what happens when you ignore the transmission fluid in a Mercedes. The fluid starts as a precisely engineered lubricant designed to coat the clutch packs, cushion the gear shifts, and protect the solenoids and valve body from metal-on-metal contact. As it degrades under heat and pressure, it loses viscosity and begins to oxidize. It becomes acidic. That acid slowly attacks the aluminum valve body inside the transmission, the rubber seals that maintain fluid pressure where it needs to be, and the clutch materials that determine how smoothly and reliably the gears engage. Mercedes 7-speed and 9-speed automatic transmissions are extraordinarily complex machines with hundreds of precision components working together thousands of times every single day. When the fluid protecting those components has degraded into a thin, acidic liquid that barely resembles what it started as, those components begin wearing in ways that are not reversible, slipping on upshifts, shuddering under load, delayed engagement when you pull away from a stop. These are not minor inconveniences. These are symptoms of a transmission that is eating itself from the inside. The owners who hit 500,000 miles on a Mercedes change their transmission fluid every 40,000 to 60,000 miles. They use the correct Mercedes specification fluid, which for most modern models is the 236.14 specification. They do not substitute generic ATF fluid just because it is cheaper. The correct fluid costs more because it is formulated to work within the precise tolerances of a Mercedes gearbox, and using the wrong fluid is almost as damaging as using no fluid at all. A transmission service on a Mercedes costs between $200 and $350. A transmission replacement costs between $5,000 and $12,000. The owners who make it to 500,000 miles paid $250 every 40,000 miles and protected a $12,000 component. That is not extravagant spending. That is intelligence applied to a high-value machine. Do not let a shop convince you the fluid is fine because the car shifts smoothly right now. Smooth shifting today with degraded fluid is like a body feeling healthy the week before a serious illness. The damage is happening long before the symptoms appear. Now, transmission care is critical, but the next secret on this list sits at the absolute foundation of every long-lasting Mercedes engine ever built. Get this one wrong and nothing else you do will be enough to save your engine from an early retirement. Number 5. Build an engine oil protocol and never deviate from it. The engine in your Mercedes is the most precisely machined component in the entire car. The tolerances between moving parts inside that engine are measured in microns. A human hair is approximately 70 microns wide. The gap between your crankshaft journal and the bearing surface it rides on is smaller than that. The only thing preventing those surfaces from destroying each other at every single revolution is a film of oil thinner than a sheet of paper. That is why engine oil is not a suggestion in a Mercedes. It is a lifeline, and most owners treat it like a routine formality rather than the critical protection system it actually is. Here's what every high-mileage Mercedes owner understands that the average driver does not. Mercedes-Benz engineers developed their own oil approval specifications because generic oil is simply not good enough for their engines. The most common approvals you need to know are MB 229.5, MB 229.51, and MB 229.3. These specifications define exactly how the oil must perform under high heat, high pressure, and sustained stress. An oil that meets these specs has been tested and verified to protect a Mercedes engine under real operating conditions. An oil that does not meet these specs has not been tested for your engine at all. When you put non-approved oil into a Mercedes engine, the consequences are not immediate, and that is part of why people keep doing it. The engine starts fine, it sounds fine, it drives fine, but over thousands of miles, that oil is leaving microscopic deposits on valve train components, failing to fully protect bearing surfaces at cold startup, and gradually allowing more metal-to-metal contact than the engine was engineered to tolerate. By the time you can hear or feel the damage, it has been accumulating for a very long time. The owners who get extraordinary mileage out of their Mercedes build what you can call an oil protocol. They choose an oil that carries the correct Mercedes approval. They set a personal change interval of 7,000 to 10,000 miles, regardless of what the service monitor displays, because the monitor calculates averages and does not account for your specific driving patterns, your local climate, or the age and condition of your engine. They always verify the Mercedes-Benz approval number on the label before buying, and they never let a quick lube shop choose the oil for them. There is one more element to a proper oil protocol that most people miss entirely, and that is the oil filter. A genuine Mercedes oil filter or a quality OEM equivalent from a trusted supplier like MAN or MAHLE is engineered to handle the specific oil flow rates and pressures that a Mercedes engine produces. A cheap generic filter has a bypass valve calibrated for a different kind of engine. Under the high oil pressure a Mercedes generates at cold start, that bypass valve can open and allow completely unfiltered oil to circulate through the engine. That unfiltered oil carries metal particles directly to your bearing surfaces on every cold start. Cheap filter, catastrophic long-term consequences that build silently over years. Approved oil, correct change interval, quality filter, that is the protocol. The owners doing 700,000 and 1 million miles on Mercedes engines are doing exactly this every single time, without a single exception. But protecting the engine from the inside is only part of the equation. What about the system that feeds your engine the fuel it needs to fire on every single combustion event? The next secret is one almost nobody talks about openly, but it quietly separates the 200,000-mile Mercedes from the 500,000-mile Mercedes. Number 4, keep the fuel system clean and feed it what it deserves. Your Mercedes fuel system is not complicated to maintain, but it requires consistent attention that most owners never give it. And when it is neglected over years and high mileage, it develops problems that affect the entire engine. not just the components directly involved in fuel delivery. Here is how a fuel system degrades on a long-term basis. Over years of driving, carbon deposits accumulate on the intake valves and inside the combustion chambers. This is a natural byproduct of combustion on any engine. But on direct injection Mercedes engines, it happens faster than on older designs because the fuel no longer washes over the intake valves the way it used to in port injection engines. Those carbon deposits restrict airflow into the cylinder. They hold heat. They disrupt the precise air-fuel mixture that your engine management system has been carefully calibrated to deliver. Over time, this causes rough idle, reduced power output, increased fuel consumption, and additional thermal stress on engine components that were never meant to operate under those conditions. The owners who drive their Mercedes to extraordinary mileage address this proactively. Every 30,000 miles, they have the intake valves and combustion chambers cleaned using a process called walnut blasting, or through a quality chemical induction cleaning service performed by a specialist. This removes the carbon buildup that has accumulated and restores the intake flow back to factory specification. It typically costs between $300 and $500 depending on the shop and the specific engine. But the owners who skip this service consistently are the ones who end up dealing with misfires, rough idle, and premature engine wear long before they reach high mileage. Beyond carbon cleaning, fuel system longevity comes down to two additional habits: the fuel you put in the tank and the fuel filter maintenance you perform. On the fuel quality side, high mileage Mercedes owners always use the minimum octane rating specified for their specific engine and never go below it. A Mercedes V6 or V8 engine calibrated for premium fuel will technically run on regular fuel in an emergency, but the engine management system will retard the ignition timing to prevent knock, reducing power and increasing heat inside the combustion chamber. Doing this consistently over years of ownership adds up to measurable wear on internal components that proper fuel would have protected. On the fuel filter side, many Mercedes models carry a fuel filter that the manufacturer calls a lifetime component. Long-term owners replace it anyway at approximately 60,000 to 80,000 miles. A restricted fuel filter forces the fuel pump to work harder than its design specifications under load. Fuel pumps that work beyond their intended parameters fail earlier than fuel pumps operating within their designed range. A fuel filter costs $40. A fuel pump replacement on a Mercedes costs between $600 and $1,200. The math is straightforward. Now we are at the halfway point of this list, and I want to pause for a second. If this information is genuinely changing how you think about your Mercedes, hit that like button right now. Alright, let us keep going, because the next 3 secrets are where things get really interesting. Number 3, treat your electrical system like the brain. It is modern Mercedes vehicles are rolling computers. The number of control units, sensors, and electronic modules inside a current generation, Mercedes would have seemed like science fiction just a few decades ago. And while all of that electronics delivers an extraordinary driving and ownership experience, it also means that electrical system neglect carries consequences that older, simpler cars simply did not present. The most foundational electrical habit that high-mileage Mercedes owners develop is proactive battery management. The battery in a modern Mercedes is not just a starting device. It is the voltage reference point for every single control unit in the entire car. When the battery voltage is unstable, drops under load, or delivers inconsistent current, every module that depends on stable voltage begins behaving unpredictably. You get fault codes for systems that are not actually broken. Warning lights appear and disappear without clear explanation. Modules reset unexpectedly or lose their learned calibration settings. All of this is expensive to diagnose and can send shops down rabbit holes of replacing components that did not actually need replacing, because a weak battery was generating false symptoms throughout the electrical network. High-mileage Mercedes owners test their battery every year, especially after the car passes 5 years old. A battery load test takes 5 minutes at any reputable shop and tells you exactly how much capacity the battery has remaining and whether it is holding voltage correctly under load. Replacing a battery that tests weak before it fails completely costs around $250. Dealing with the cascade of electrical complaints that a dying battery triggers across multiple modules can cost several times that amount in diagnostic fees alone. And here's the critical detail that separates someone who genuinely knows Mercedes from someone who does not. When you replace the battery in a modern Mercedes, the new battery must be registered through the diagnostic system. The power management computer needs to know the exact age, capacity, and specifications of the new battery, so it can calibrate the charging voltage from the alternator correctly. Skip that registration and the alternator will overcharge the new battery, dramatically shortening its lifespan and potentially causing electrical instability throughout the car. Every shop that works on Mercedes regularly performs this step as a matter of routine. Many shops that do not specialize in Mercedes have never heard of it and have no idea the procedure exists. Beyond the battery, the other electrical habit that distinguishes long-term owners is addressing stored fault codes proactively. proactively, including the ones that have not yet triggered a warning light. Modern Mercedes vehicles store pending codes, which are codes that have been detected by a sensor but have not yet met the threshold required to illuminate a dashboard warning. During a proper Service A or Service B inspection at a Mercedes specialist, those pending codes get pulled and reviewed. They are frequently early warnings of developing issues that cost almost nothing to address at that stage, and a significant amount to repair after they progress into active failures, healthy battery, proper registration on every replacement, annual load testing, proactive code scanning at every service. These habits keep your Mercedes electronics running cleanly and prevent the compounding electrical confusion that sends cars to the dealer for expensive diagnostic sessions that never fully resolve what is actually causing the problem. The next secret is one of the most physically consequential things that happens to a Mercedes over very high mileage, and it is something most owners only address after they can already feel the problem. The owners who make it to 500,000 miles address it long before that moment arrives. Number 2. Replace rubber and suspension components before they tell you. There is a category of components on your Mercedes that nobody thinks about until something goes wrong, and by the time something goes wrong, the repair is always more expensive than it needed to be. These are the rubber and suspension components: the bushings, the engine mounts, the transmission mounts, the ball joints, the tie rod ends, the control arm bushings, the sway bar links, and on many Mercedes models, the air suspension components. Here is what happens to rubber under years of heat, cold, road vibration, and mechanical stress. It hardens, it cracks, it loses the flexibility and damping properties it was specifically designed to provide. A rubber engine mount that is working correctly absorbs vibration between the engine and the chassis, protecting both the engine and the car's structure from the constant micro impacts of a running engine. When that mount hardens and cracks, engine vibration transfers directly into the chassis. That vibration then affects every component bolted to the chassis, including electrical connectors, sensor mounting points, and brackets that were never designed to absorb engine vibration for sustained periods. One failed engine mount creates a chain of secondary stress that spreads across dozens of other components quietly and invisibly. The high-mileage owners inspect and replace rubber components on a defined schedule, not when they fail. They replace engine and transmission mounts between 80,000 and 100,000 miles as a matter of routine. They replace control arm bushings and suspension bushings at similar intervals. They do not wait for a clunk, a vibration, or a steering pull to tell them something is worn. By the time those symptoms appear, the worn component has already been generating secondary damage for thousands of miles. On Mercedes models equipped with the Airmatic air suspension system, this proactive approach becomes even more critical. The rubber air bladders inside, the air struts begin degrading with age and cumulative compression cycles. When they start leaking slowly, the air compressor runs almost continuously to compensate for the pressure loss and maintain ride height. An air compressor running non-stop is not designed for that operating pattern and will fail within weeks under those conditions. Now, instead of replacing one strut proactively for $400 to $600, you are replacing a strut and a burned-out compressor together for $1,500 to $2,500. The owners doing 500,000 miles on their Mercedes have the air struts inspected at every service after 80,000 miles and replace them at the first sign of wear, not after the compressor has already died. Tires belong in this conversation as well, even though most people do not think of them as a suspension component. Worn tires change the load distribution across every suspension and steering component every single time you corner, brake, or accelerate. Running tires past their useful life add stress on wheel bearings, ball joints, and control arm bushings that compounds their wear rate measurably over time. Rotate your tires every 7,000 to 8,000 miles and replace them when the tread wear indicators tell you to. The theme running through every high-mileage Mercedes owner's approach is consistent. Address things before they fail. The cost of prevention is always a fraction of the cost of repair. We are down to number 1 now, and this is the single factor that determines whether everything else on this list actually works or gets quietly wasted. Without number 1, none of the other secrets matter enough to save your Mercedes from early failure. And the people who do not know this one wonder for years why their car keeps struggling despite everything they thought they were doing right. Number 1. Find one specialist and make them your Mercedes partner for life. Everything on this list, the coolant, the transmission fluid, the oil protocol, the fuel system, the electrical habits, the suspension components, all of it depends on one thing to actually work the way it is supposed to. It depends on having the right person execute every service correctly, with the right tools, the right knowledge, and a genuine understanding of your specific car and how it has been used. Your Mercedes is not like other cars. The mechanical systems are more complex. The electronic architecture is more sophisticated. The service procedures contain specific steps that general mechanics either do not know exist or do not have the diagnostic equipment to perform. When any of the maintenance items on this list gets done incorrectly at a general shop, it does not just fail to help your car, It actively creates new problems on top of the maintenance you already paid for. Think about what a battery replacement looks like at a general shop versus a Mercedes specialist. At a general shop, they swap the battery, close the hood, and hand you the keys. At a Mercedes specialist, they swap the battery and then spend 5 minutes registering the new battery through the diagnostic system, so the power management computer calibrates its charging output correctly. The general shop charges less, but the Mercedes owner who goes to the general shop ends up with a battery that gets overcharged, fails within 2 years, and triggers electrical complaints across multiple modules in the process. The Mercedes owner who goes to the specialist pays a bit more and drives away with a battery that lasts 5 to 7 years with no downstream electrical complications at all. Multiply that dynamic across every service the car receives over 500,000 miles, and you start to understand why the shop relationship matters more than almost any other single variable in the entire equation of long-term Mercedes ownership. The right specialist is not automatically the dealership. Dealerships have the correct tools and software, but they also carry high labor rates, service advisors who are measured on upsell revenue, and technicians who rotate between different vehicles and do not always develop deep specialized expertise in any one specific model or generation. The best outcome for most Mercedes owners is a dedicated independent specialist, a shop where Mercedes vehicles represent the core of the business, where the technicians have deep familiarity with specific model generations and their known failure patterns, and where the relationship between owner and mechanic is built and strengthened over years of consistent service history. That service history is itself one of the most powerful tools you have for keeping your Mercedes healthy across the long term. When the same specialist services your car at every interval, they build a detailed and specific knowledge of your exact vehicle. They know what was replaced at 60,000 miles. They remember the minor vibration that appeared at 90,000 miles and what caused it. They have a complete record of every fluid, every component, every repair, and every anomaly going back years. That accumulated knowledge allows them to spot developing problems earlier, make faster and more accurate diagnoses when something does go wrong, and give you completely honest advice about what genuinely needs attention now versus what can safely wait until the next service. Find a specialist, build the relationship, show up for every single service interval without skipping one. Bring your service records, ask questions, and take notes. Trust the process and follow through consistently. The formula for a 500,000-mile Mercedes is not a secret kept by a small group of insiders. It is consistent, correct, expert maintenance executed faithfully from the day you buy the car to the day you decide to stop driving it. The cars that fail early are not poorly built. They are poorly maintained, often by the wrong people using the wrong products in the wrong ways. And now you know exactly what it takes to be different. Hey, thanks for watching. If you found these tips helpful and you learned something new about keeping your Mercedes alive for the long run, let us know in the comments below. Want to see the 7 mistakes that are silently destroying Mercedes engines right now? Click on the left, and if you do not want to miss more money-saving Mercedes tips and secrets, hit that subscribe button.